When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Hey, shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome again to another presentation that I'm about to do. It's entitled The Whore That Sits Upon Many Waters, Part 5. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedule to allow me into your homes, your living rooms, your kitchens, your dining room, wherever you might be, to hear what I believe to be another dynamic lesson on the whore that sits upon many waters. Part 5. Okay, before we get started, you might be saying, Kasad, where have you been? Where have you been? Well, I have been doing some research, aka studying, conversating with brothers and sisters. I've been posting information on Facebook, just testing the atmosphere to see exactly where people are at with their studies. How do we interact with the Father? Been looking over the 70-week ministry, what is actually going on in the books of Daniel, the 7th chapter, 8, 9, and 10. Looking at the book of Revelation, the 7th chapter, the 12th chapter, the 13th chapter, and we are presently now working on Revelation, the 17th chapter. And I personally believe that if we don't have a strong background on what's going on in the book of Daniel, we're going to miss the proper overstanding. All right, I'm going to say overstanding. We're not going to be able to understand what's going on in the book of Revelation, because I believe that the book of Daniel sets the foundation to a lot of our understanding that we might, or that we should be having here in these, I believe, special times, okay, that we're living in now. Once again, I don't believe that what is happening today is happening outside of the vacuum. It's happening outside of the scope. Meaning now is that I don't believe that, once again, that things came to an end, Hebraically, at an end in 70 AD. There are things that we can still look forward to happening in the future. That's my perspective, okay? And it's up to each and every individual to actually read Torah for himself. Those first 5 books, I believe, are going to be very important also in determining whether or not all things came to an end in 70 AD, the way that Preterist describes it. Okay, so without further ado, because there's so much that I want to bring to the table, but I don't want to hold you guys too long here today. So let's go ahead with the Father's Prayer. We're going to do it in what we know to be Hebrew. Okay, I'll say that. And I'll follow along with the program, and we'll also do it in English. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudash Shemka, O Yit Barak Nakutka, Retsunka Yahiye Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ain, Lakminu Tamadit, Umakulanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anachnu, Mukalim, Tabi Anu Layide Nasayon, Sham Ranu Makal Ra. All this thing belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, who I believe he was that Mashiach that came during the first century, and he had a very powerful message to deliver to the nation of Israel at that time. I believe that he was prophesied to come, and he came during that 14th generation that is described to us in the book of Yahuah, and that is extremely important for us to recognize that Mashiach and what to do after that, okay, I believe is also important. I believe that a lot of people aren't looking at this huge, not a big elephant, but a huge elephant that's in a room, and it's a fluorescent colored elephant, and nobody really wants to address that. And what I want to try to do in the lessons that I do is to address what we're calling, or what I'm calling now, the big fat fluorescent elephant that's in the room. Meaning now is that I believe that America is, once again, I believe that America is an extension of Rome. Let's also do the Father's Prayer, and what we call, that is known by some as Yashra'al Quadash. All right, Yashra'al Quadash. Let's say in the ancient tongue, the ancient language. And I just want to make sure that I kind of like cover both boards. I know a lot of people don't subscribe to the Abba Gada Hawa, pronunciation of the alphabet, and I'm fine with that. But I believe everybody should understand is that the vowel pointing system that we have today by Jewish folks, this dramatic pronunciation of these alphabets, I don't believe that was the way that our ancient forefathers spoke. All right. But without further ado, let's go ahead with the Father's Prayer, the way that we have it here in what is believed to be the ancient tongue. Abanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Qudash, Haya, Shamka, Yahuah, Malak Wavka, Thaba'a, Ratazaka, Haya, Ba'aratazah, Kawa, Haya, Bashamayim, Nathanawa, Lacham Kal Yawam, Wasalaklanawa, Kawab Wathinawa, Kasalaklanawa, Kawab Wathinawa, Wala'a, Thabaya Anawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Hawashayanawa, Mayan, Rai, Kaya, Lakar, Hamalakwath, Walahala, Wahathat Praharath, Lahai Willam Yam. All this thing belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. And once again, I truly believe he was the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel, Yashra'al. So, once again, Mr. McCall, the title of today's show is called The Whore That Sits on Many Waters. All right? The Whore That Sits on Many Waters. Now, before we dive into today's lesson, there are a couple of, I believe, to be amazing facts that I found from a previous show. And I believe that it's going to be very important for us to understand these facts that I'm going to bring out to help us to understand who is the whore that sits upon many waters. One of those amazing facts that I would like to bring to everybody's attention, because once again, I don't believe that things came to an end the way that preterists believe. Because I don't believe, once again, that the things that are happening today are happening outside of the vacuum. We're not living in what they call a church age. I believe that we're living in an AKA church age. Meaning now is that I believe that the Torah is still in effect. All of it. All of Torah was in effect. I don't believe that the Mashiach came to destroy the Torah. I don't believe that Moshe, when he gave the Torah to the 12 tribes of Israel at Mount Sinai, it was his understanding or any of the prophets' understanding that at some point it would come to an end. I don't believe that the Talmudim or the disciples of the Mashiach taught that the Torah was but at some point would come to an end. So being that I don't believe that the things that are happening today are happening outside of this vacuum or outside of gospel, one of the amazing facts that I see today surrounding America, which I believe to be an extension of Rome, came across some information that there's a couple of submarines. They're called Columbia-class submarines that the United States has. They are 556 feet long, 43 feet in diameter, making them the largest and most complex submarines ever built. They do not need to be refueled for 40 years. But in case the crew gets hungry, yes, they do come up and they restock this submarine, okay, with food that can last not for days, not for weeks, not for months, but for years at a time. I'm here to share with the Mishpachah this evening is that we are on the brink of something more disastrous in comparison to what happened in 70 AD. Once again, we are on the brink of something more drastic to happen in comparison to what happened in 70 AD. What we're looking to see what's going to happen is going to far surpass that. And we need to be very prepared on what's about to happen, which I believe to be in the near future. Now, these Columbia-class submarines can deliver 16 nuclear or other missiles to targets 8,000 miles away with pinpoint accuracy. How do we now believe with this type of military might that we can't find it in Scripture? How is that possible? And I understand that there's a lot of different styles of hermeneutics, eschatology, techniques, and things like that where brothers are using. But I am bent on the fact that we are living in some very serious times here. And the course that we're on now is not going to go backwards. It's going to continue to move forward, moving us now to a point where an ultimate decision would have to be made. Once again, we're living in an era that is heading to a point in time where an ultimate decision would have to be made. My argument is that the whole planet Earth is in chaos. And once again, we're on the verge of something major that's about to happen, and it's going to far exceed what happened in 70 AD. Let's move on. Here I have a chart, okay? I have a chart, and we see at first the United States. This chart is explaining that the U.S., the United States, which is an extension of Rome, spent $916 billion. That's with a B. $916 billion on warfare. Building and stocking up for something that is major about to happen. But if we stay blind to the news and we continue to listen to the rap videos and the R&B songs and any other thing that's going to take our minds off of what's actually happening, and I showed you this Columbia-style missile, or actually not a missile now, but submarine that is able to now stay underwater for 40 years. It never needs fueling or anything for 40 years. And it is ready to go to war. It can strike its target with inside of 8,000 miles with pinpoint accuracy. Then you have China that spent $296 billion. You have Russia that spent $109 billion. India spent $83.6 billion. Saudi Arabia, $75.8 billion. The United Kingdom, $74.9 74.9 billion. Germany, 66.8 billion. Ukraine, 64.8 billion. France, 61.3 billion. Japan, 50.2 billion. And South Korea, 47.9 billion. Now, why did I feel the need to bring this to our attention this evening or this afternoon? The reason why is because I believe that during the time of the first century, around 116, 117 AD, Rome was that whore that sat upon many waters. America is an extension of Rome. And if you look at this chart, if you add up all of the funds that China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Germany, Ukraine, France, Japan, South Korea, total of all of the funds that they spent in the billions towards their military, it does not even add up or come close to what United States has spent on her military stockpile. That's $916 billion. America, during the 21st century here, is an extension of Rome, and she is that whore that sits upon many waters. Hands down, is what I believe. Let's move on. Looking at this whore that sits upon many waters, and this is part 5, let's look at what some of the reformers and some of the church leaders had to say about this whore that sits upon many waters. This is from John Wycliffe, Fox's Book of Martyrs, page 90. It is quoted, "We suppose that the Antichrist, the head of all this evil men, is the Pope of Rome." Let's read on. John Huss, let's see what he has to say about the whore that sits upon many waters. "The Pope is the true Antichrist, of whom it is written that he sitteth in the temple of God, among the people where Christ is worshipped." This is the writings from John Huss. Let's read on. The Vicar, which means the replacement of Christ. Let's see what Martin Luther, the Works of Martin Luther, volume 2, page 385, has to say about the whore that sits upon many waters. The vicar is in the palace, or in the place of an absent chief. What is such a vicar but the Antichrist? I know and am certain that the papacy is the kingdom of Babylon. All right. So I find this information very important as we continue to unravel to see exactly how we should be looking at the scriptures here during the 21st century. I have no arguments whatsoever during the first century how our ancient forefathers was viewing the scriptures. I have no issues with the 70 AD doctrine, absolutely at all. I'm arguing that Rome morphed into what we have today, and I believe that if it walks like a duck, it's the color of a duck. It quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And Rome, once again, once again, is the extension of Rome. Let's look at what Thomas Cranmer, 1489 to 1556, in his Anglican Works, volume 1, pages 6 to 7, what he has to say in regards to the whore that sits upon many waters, who is Rome and who is Babylon. "Whereof it followeth Rome to be the seat of the Antichrist, and the Pope to be the very Antichrist himself. I could prove the same by many of the scriptures in Daniel and Revelation. old writers, and strong reasons. So again, what do we do after 70 AD? Was the spirit of Babylon destroyed in 70 AD? And I believe any logical thinking person would say that the spirit of Babylon did not come to an end in 70 AD. And if the spirit of Babylon didn't come to an end in 70 AD, we need to now see, where are we according to biblical prophecy? And maybe we should re-examine the scriptures and see how it fits in today's society in order for us to be prepared once again for something major that's about to happen. Let's move on. Charles Spurgeon. He writes, "Behold, upon her forehead the name Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. The Church of Rome and her teachings are a vast mountain of rubbish." You hear that now? This is from Charles Spurgeon. "The Church of Rome and her teachings are a vast mountain of rubbish, covering the truth of God." And like I've shared in previous videos, what is Babylon? Babylon means confusion. Babylon means a mixture of the truth along with a lie. And this Babylonian teaching we see now being presented to Eve in the garden, where the adversary brought a Babylonian or a Babel style teaching where he mixed the truth with a lie and introduced it to Eve, who later introduced it to Adam. And that Babylonian mindset could not dwell in the Garden of Eden. And so once they were exposed to this lie mixed with a truth, they were now introduced to what we call politics. Babylon is politics. So Babylon is a geopolitical system that teaches anything or everything outside of Torah. They mix the truth with a lie. That's basically what Babylon is. And we see now, when you look at the Roman Catholic Church, we're talking about a government, a system that is teaching a whole bunch of stuff, okay, that goes against Torah. And Christianity, whether it's a Baptist, a Lutheran, Episcopalian, Jehovah's Witness, whatever, if we really do our due diligence in understanding what this whole thing is about, you will find out that all of this falls under the Roman Catholic Church. And once again, I'm going to keep saying this. America is an extension of Rome. I've done so many classes on that. All right. And so I'm not going to go back over that again, but I have done plenty of classes sharing with the Mishpachah that America is an extension of Rome, is an extension of Babylon. Let's look at Leroy Fromm, The Prophetic Faith of Our Fathers, Volume 2. Daniel and Paul had predicted that the Antichrist would sit in the temple of God. We affirm him to be the Pope. Some persons think us too severe and censorious when we call the Roman Pontiff the Antichrist. And you even see this title, the Pontiff Maximus, when we begin to look at what happened in 70, I think it was around 71, 73 AD, when we see Vespasian was recognized as the chief priest, and he was also known as the Pontiff Maximus. So all of this stuff, Mishpachah, is intertwined. But again, it all depends on how far a brother or sister wants to do his or her homework. Hold on 1 second here, Mishpachah. We're going to jump right back into this. All right, 1 second. 1 second, I need to pull something up here. One second. Okay. The whore that sits upon many waters, part 5. So again, as always, I want to send out my peace and blessings to the family, to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. I pray that the Father of Yahuah continue to bestow upon you his everlasting mercy. I want to thank you so much for your time and allowing me to get as meticulous as I possibly can in defining Revelation, the 17th chapter. The mystery of the woman and the beast has been a topic of conversation for over 1,000 years, and there's still a big argument of who she might be to this very day. There has been several attempts to unravel this great mystery, as you have noticed on YouTube and other social media platforms. I have maybe 2 more presentations on the topic, the woman and the beast, and that will conclude my investigation on the topic. So once again, Mishpachah, I want to thank you for following along on this journey with me on the whore that sits upon many waters. All right, I really do appreciate your time. So once again, who is the woman in Revelation, the 17th chapter? Once again, according to my personal research, the woman is without a doubt Babylon. And again, Babylon is a geopolitical entity that has been in operation since the days of Adam and his wife, Yahuah. Babylon is in full swing, even more so now than it has ever been before. Babylon is a geopolitical system disguised in sheep's clothing, speaking as a lamb. Okay, speaking as a lamb, but the actual identity of Babylon is she's a wolf in sheep's clothing is basically what it is. So it speaks one way, but it does something counter to what it actually says. So with carefully examining this geopolitical system, this geopolitical system isn't operating under any specific religion. What usually goes under the radar is the fact that there are over 45,000 Christian denominations worldwide. Listen to this again. There are over 45,000 Christian denominations worldwide, with Catholicism being the largest branch. All right. Let's take a look at this first scripture to help support my perspective, and we're going to look at the book of Nahum 3 and 4. All right, the book of Nahum 3 and 4. Let me just pull it up right quick. Nahum 3 and 4. Here we go. Let me actually start from verse 1 and read down to verse 4. It says, "Woe to the bloody city! It is full of lies, robbery. The prey departeth not. The noise of the whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels of the prancing horses and the jumping chariots. The horsemen lift up both the bright sword and the glittering spear." And has in parentheses, "There is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is no end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft, that selleth the nations through her whoredoms and families throughout her witchcraft." These are the characteristics of Babylon. But she's been called the bloody city. How do we now make this chapter and the verses that I just made relevant to today? Because we see that the term bloody city now wasn't always applicable to the nation of Israel during the first century. There were other cities prior to the nation of Israel that also carried this title. Nineveh, Babylon, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans. It is very important for us to understand that Daniel spoke of these four metals, and that last metal that he spoke of was Rome, but there's an extension of Rome. Because scriptures teaches us is that there will come a great stone, metaphorically speaking now, the Mashiach will strike this colossal figure at the feet. And when this colossal figure is destroyed, scripture teaches us in the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter, that there will be no more remaining of Babylon. That whole colossal figure, the head of gold, the arms and chest of silver, the lower torso being of bronze, and then we have the legs being of iron, and then it makes mention of the iron mixed with clay, and then it makes mention of the 10 toes. All of that needs to be defined properly in order for us to now understand what is going on here during the 21st century. Let's read on. Again, America is the modern day Babylon, aka the woman in Revelation, the 17th chapter, also known as Rome during antiquity. What I have, Ms. Picard, on the screen is a description that is often used to show how the Tower of Babel might have looked. All right? Might have looked. And we have to the far right, we have the EU, which is the parliament out in Strasbourg. See how America mimics Babylon during the time of Nimrod? And I've been sharing over and over and over again for about 2.5 years now, is that the spirit of Babylon has moved from Nebuchadnezzar, or the head of gold, to the Medo-Persian Empire, to the Greeks, to the Romans, until today. It is still active today, meaning that the spirit of Babylon is still alive and well today. And we see now, again, the mimicking of America, making a reference to her relationship with Babylon. Let's move on. Here, Mishvikar, we have Exhibit B. So is this also a coincidence? Where we have a woman on the far left with 7, let's call them prongs, I guess you would call them. But these prongs, they represent something, because to the far right, you have Lady Liberty, some call it the Statue of Liberty. It's the same thing. So this Babylonian worshiping that America is doing is an extension of Rome. And then when you read, or when you look down at the image to the far, actually underneath the two pictures that we have above, that's an image of Ishtar. And Ishtar goes back during the time of the Babylonians, where you begin to look at Ishtar, Ayana, you begin to look at Roma, Romadea, where she is depicted as a woman sitting on 7 hills during the first century? Let's read a little bit here. A French sculptor, Frederic Bartholdi, designed the Statue of Liberty. Bartholdi did not originate the concept of the statue. The idea of creating a Statue of Liberty and freedom was first proposed by another Frenchman by the name of Edward. His name is La Bollier. It was La Bollier's idea and determination during the American Civil War that carried the idea from a simple notion to an actual project. La Bolle, a French Freemason, proposed the idea of a giant statue replicating a goddess that the Messianic movement idolized. So this whole thing about this, this Messianic movement, and begin to look at Ayana, you begin to look at Enki, Enlil, Damuzi, all of these Babylonian gods. America is an extension of Babylon. America is an extension of Rome. It's all one and the same. How do we say that this has nothing to do with 21st century doctrine, where you see now, just a couple of months ago, maybe as far as a year ago, where you seen America light up the White House in the colors of the LGBTQ community? What is this all about? Mishpachah, this is Sodom and Gomorrah all over again. What is happening today isn't happening outside of a vacuum. The Most High's eyes are still watching what we're doing and whether or not we're going to sell ourselves out to this Babylonian system. Let's read on. Let's unravel what seems to be the obvious. Revelation 17:3. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Mishpachah. The city of Rome started when a wall was built around the house that had been built on 7 hills. This was the start of the pagan Roman Republic that was ruled by a Senate and 2 councils who were elected each year. So, with me reading what I've read so far, you don't see the relationship on how America is being ran and how Rome started, how it actually started, how it was actually built on 7 hills. And you see no comparison with that. And those 7 hills are Quarinal, Viminal, Esplanine, Calian, Capitoline, Palatine, and Avatine. And I brought that out on many occasions, trying to show everyone that, listen, all of this is interconnected, and we need to be able, in these last days, identify what is going on and who is this mystery woman today during the 21st century that is sitting upon many waters. Let's read on. The headquarters of the Roman Republic was the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. All right, and then we see it here, the Capitoline Hill, and the way that America has it in this old cartoon that I used to watch back in the day. It was called The Electric Company, where it talks about a bill, okay, and how bills are made and how a bill becomes a law and what happens on what? Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill is where all of the major decisions are being made, where we begin to look at how politics, Babylon is politics. That's all what it is. Politics. So let's read on. Revelation 17 and 9. Revelation 17 and 9. Revelation 17 and 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. If you're interested in seeing how far the rabbit hole really goes, look up the word Roma, R-O-M-A. Once again, R-O-M-A, Dia, D-E-A. You might see it Dia Roma or Roma Dia. It's going to show you during the first century of the worshiping of this Roman goddess, which is Diana, which is Ishtar. And today it would be the Statue of Liberty. And it's going to show you now on this coin a woman sitting upon 7 hills. And when you look at now those 7 churches now that was in Asia Minor, guess what the god or the goddess that was being worshipped during the first century? Guess what the name of that goddess was? Dia Roma. And you have during the first century on the coins that was being used to buy and trade, on one side of the coin was Vespasian. On the other side of the coin was Dia Roma sitting on the 7 hills of Rome. What do we have here? I want to take a look. At your leisure, Mr. Carr, take a look at Matthew, the 4th chapter, verses 1 through 9. No, what? Actually, I'll do that. Matthew, the 4th chapter, verses 1 through 9. Because I believe that this is compelling. I believe hands down that America is an extension of Rome. Now, let's see what is actually going on with this conversation that the Mashiach, the meaning the definite article, the Mashiach, what was this message or this conversing that was being held between the Mashiach and the adversary? So let's read it. Then was the Mashiach led up of the spirit of the Ruach into the wilderness. I have brought out before that this word wilderness would be Babylon. The wilderness would be Rome. The wilderness would be a realm or a world outside of Torah. Meaning today, the wilderness would be the sports world, entertainment, anything that offers you an alternative way to the Torah way. This wilderness would have been described in the conversation that what the adversary had with Eve. Is introducing a realm, a world of politics. So watch this now. Then was the Mashiach led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the adversary, the devil, Nakash, the serpent, the whisperer. And when he had fasted, which was the Mashiach, when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterwards a-hungered. So once again, we see the Mashiach now being brought to a point where he had a need. He had a desire. He fasted for 40 days and for 40 nights, and he was hungered. And so the adversary usually comes to us at our lowest point where we now need physical things. That's how the adversary works. He works when you're now at your lowest point. And this is the reason why I truly believe that you have to stand on your square. Meaning now is that you have to stay grounded, reading and understanding Torah. This is the reason why we have Torah portions, to keep us grounded in Scripture. If you're not grounded in Scripture, I don't care who you are. I don't care what man you are or what woman you are. The adversary will challenge your foundation. And if your foundation is not Torah, I don't care. You will jeopardize your situation, whether it's your relationship with your husband, or whether it's your relationship with your children, or with your family, or with other Torah believers. If you're not standing 10 toes down in Torah, you will fall. Torah has to be your foundation. The earth was created on the basis of Torah. So let's read this what's happening now. And so when the tempter, which is another name for the adversary, came to him, which is the Mashiach, he said, if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But the Mashiach answered and said, it is written, man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. That's what the Mashiach said. So whatever adversity, trauma that you might be going through, remember, the true living is living by the word of God, by living according to the words of the Most High, by living according to Torah. It has to be the foundation. Without it, there will be problems. I guarantee you there will be problems. Then the adversary, the devil, the tempter, taketh up the Mashiach into the holy city and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written. All right. So the adversary knows Scripture, and he knows the redemptive role of the Mashiach. He knows how important the Mashiach is and what the Mashiach came to do. But he's introducing, or he wants to introduce to the Mashiach another form of living. He's trying to teach, or he's trying to introduce to the Mashiach politics. He's trying to share with the Mashiach a Babylonian system. What the adversary is sharing with the Mashiach are the very same things that the adversary shared with Eve in the garden. The tree of good and evil. Good and evil is a mixture. It's a GMO. It's a hybrid. It's not the real thing. So everything that we see, the adversary offering the Mashiach, it is not the real thing. Let's read on. And he said unto him, if thou be the Son of the Father, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels or his messengers charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou castest thy foot against a stone. The Mashiach said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt Yahuah thy Elohim. Again the devil taketh him, which is the Mashiach, up into an exceeding high mountain, and show him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. So watch this, Mishpachah. All the kingdoms of the world, the adversary, Nakash, the tempter, the devil, the adversary, was the king of these kingdoms. He was the king of Babylon. He was the driving force behind the Medo-Persian Empire. He was the driving force behind the the Greek Empire. He was the force behind Rome. And all of those kingdoms glorified in, what word can I use? They all glorified themselves in the type of glory that had an expiration date. Meaning now it was all about temporary pleasure. All of it. And we see this temporary pleasure today. Would sign this contract, which are Babylonian contracts. Sign this contract and I will make you a millionaire. I will make you a billionaire. But this is the thing. You must sell your soul. The women must dress half naked. In order now to receive this kingdom, this temporary pleasure, you must sell your body, dress naked, talk about sex all day long. The men, you must teach gang banging. West Coast against East Coast. My hood is better than your hood. These were the things that was showed to the Mashiach by the adversary, because the adversary had dominion over those things. And this is the reason why I say Babylon was not destroyed in 70 AD. The spirit of Babylon still exists today, because we still have people in our community, and not just in our community alone, but in other communities also, because the adversary does not discriminate. When I see a Sexy Red, a Nicki Minaj, a Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, when I see these women dressed half naked in order to get that type of status, lets me know that they've signed a contract with the tempter, the devil, the adversary. And the same thing now with our men that are glorifying murder, rape, and gangbanging. That's what all the rap is about. They're not teaching knowledge of self. They are not teaching knowledge of self. It's all destructive music. But let's read on here. Again, the adversary of the devil taketh the Mashiach up into an exceeding high mountain to show him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then the Mashiach said the Mashiach to him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the sovereign Yahuah the Elohim, and him only shalt thou serve. Now, once the Mashiach overcame the perils of the world, the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered into the Mashiach. And I forget which book it was, but it also makes mention that the adversary said that these kingdoms were his, and that he had the power now to actually give or grant these wishes, or show him this world where he could become a very rich, honorable, and noble person if he was to surrender his allegiance to Torah and follow now the things in the wilderness, which is the material world. So the wilderness is the material world, a superficial world. Adam and Eve was kicked out of the garden and they went into Babylon, the wilderness, the material world is what this is talking about. All right. That's all what it's talking about. And you can also go to the book of Daniel, the 4th chapter, reading verses 30 to 31. But because of time constraint, I'm going to leave that alone for now. All right. I want to leave that alone. Mr. McCall, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. So just hold on for actually a 2-minute break. Hold on 1 minute. Okay. Tada Rabbah, Mr. Kai. All right, let's get back with it. We should be done in about 20 minutes. All right, 20 minutes. Excuse me. Revelation 17 and 18. And the woman which I saw is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. That is not talking about Israel. Again, the woman, John the Revelator, which you saw is that great city that reigneth. The word reigneth, rulership, dominion, authority, that is not describing Jerusalem. Because this woman, which thou sawest, is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. All right. A city that would have worldwide power. Now, there are 1.4 billion Catholics that look to Rome for leadership. That's the reason why I said that there are over 45,000 different Christian denominations. And there's roughly now about 7 to 8 billion people on the planet Earth. But 1.4 billion of them are Catholics. So this Roman Catholic Church, where you have Rome, or you have the United States, and you have Rome or Catholicism, the religion. So you have a military and you have a religion. My argument is that Catholicism, which means, or Catholic means universal, it's all Christianity. When the Mashiach had the Last Supper with his Talmudim, he was ushering in a new or renewing the proper way of honoring the Father, which is not through temple services, but through the Melchizedek order. And the Melchizedek order is a relationship with the Father that is based upon faith and works, not about sacrificing animals. I wanted to make sure that I was crystal clear. I say all of that to say is that if there's between 7 to 8 billion people on the planet Earth, and 1.4 billion of them are Catholics, my argument is that we're not supposed to be under Christianity. I don't care how you want to picture it, however you want to paint it. From the destruction of the temple going forward, the nation of Israel and others who want to have a relationship with the Father, you should be operating under the religion of Abraham. Abraham sets the stage of how things were supposed to have operated from the beginning, was through the Melchizedek order, with the understanding that Adam was a priest operating inside of the garden. This specific location on the planet Earth at that time, truth was supposed to have gone from the Garden of Eden, the Gan. The same way we see that truth, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding was supposed to have been coming from Jerusalem. But during the time of the first century, that temple was an idol. In 70 AD, that idol called the temple was destroyed. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's move on here. A city that would have world power, there are 1.4 billion Catholics that took or looked to Rome for leadership. Julius Caesar ended the pagan Roman Republic and became the supreme ruler by declaring himself dictator for life. So when we begin to look at Caesars and Khazars, they're the same people. Caesar and Khazars it's the same word. I say that to say now is that we're looking now where these Caesars are now beginning to be recognized as gods. Gods. Vespasian, near his death, was looked at as a god. And there were a lot of gods that was being reverenced by the Romans. And we have to talk about that. Mr. McCall, listen, when you begin to look at Rome, Catholicism, and America, it behooves me to believe that a person would believe that America is not an extension of all of these other countries that preceded her. It's just mind-boggling. But again, that's just me. Some people might say that, listen, I'm looking at the whole thing wrong. So Revelation 17:10. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. Okay? 7 kings, 5 are falling. 1 is present tense, and the other is not yet come, which is future tense. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. The way that we properly understand this, Mr. McCall, we have to go back to the book of Daniel. When we begin to look at the 10 toes, when we begin to look at these barbarian countries that invade Rome, and we begin to look at what happened when 3 of them now are disposed, and there's now 7 left out of the 10. Mr. McCall, we have to make sure that we understand what is going on in the book of Romans. But let's move on. We're going to tackle Revelation 17:10 in a lot more detail, but I want to kind of like stay on topic here a little bit here so that we don't go off into another topic. I despise having conversations where it doesn't stay on topic, and then at the end of it all, you find yourself talking about 10, 15 different things, and there's no resolution to the first thing that you actually spoke about. But let's move on. Caesar was the first Roman to be worshipped as a god after he died. Then he was killed. His grandnephew Augustus became the first emperor. The first emperors, from Caesar to emperor, by destroying the power of the Senate while he hypocritically pretended to acknowledge them. The city of Pergamos, began to worship Augustus while he was still alive. And we're going to talk about Pergama, the seats where Satan sits during the first century and what all of that means. All right. So again, there is so much to unravel. In the book of Revelation 1 and 2, especially the 2nd chapter, when it begins to talk about the seat where Satan sits. Where was that during the first century? Again, those of you that are studying scripture during the first century, again, the seat where Satan sits. What is that talking about during the first century? That's my homework assignment to you. All right. The city of Pergamos began to worship Augustus while he was still alive. Augustus adopted Tiberius as his son. Tiberius was vindictive, cruel, and a tremendous child molester. His brother's son, Caligula, and everybody knows about Caligula and his whole sex parties that he used to have. His brother's son, Caligula, was next emperor, and Caligula insisted on being worshipped as a god. His uncle Claudius took over, married Nero's mother, and was poisoned by Nero's mother. Watch this now. Mr. I don't have time to say everything that I would like to say, but at some point, Google, read up on Caligula, read up on Nero's mother, and how she was poisoned by Nero's mother. All right. So let's look into this a little bit. All right. Because there's so much information here. Those were the five that had fallen: Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, and Claudius. Those are five. Nero was the end of Caesar's adopted family. He burnt Rome in 64 AD and blamed it on the Yahudians and began blaming and killing Christians for the fire. Mr. McCall, they were not Christians, all right? These were Israelites. Nero blamed the fire that he started in Rome on Yahudians who were living in Rome. And there's a lot of history on that. Now, John the Revelator became a political prisoner due to his faith on the island of Patmos. When Nero died in AD 68, then John, with all of the other political prisoners, was released. So part of Revelation was written between 68 AD while the Yahudi's temple, which was an idol, was still standing. One is that was Nero, indicating that John was on the island of Patmos during Nero's persecution. Domitian was emperor from 81 AD to 96 AD. He persecuted Christians, Yahudians, and was again sentenced to prison on the island of Patmos. That is where John wrote the rest of Revelation. When Domitian died, John was again released. Now, that there is very interesting. I'll put this into the PowerPoint just to show everyone that I am reading. I don't believe this, meaning that John was sentenced to the island of Patmos twice. Anything is possible, but I'm leaning more towards that it didn't happen twice, but it actually happened once. But I am open to anybody that wants to share more some support to the argument that Domitian or John the Revelator was actually sentenced to the island of Patmos as a political prisoner twice. So let me read this again to you. Domitian was emperor from AD 81 AD to 96 AD. He persecuted Christians, and John was again sentenced to prison on the island of Patmos. This is where John wrote the rest of Revelation. When Domitian died, John was again released. I find this interesting is because we have, make sure I get this right now. The sons of Vespasian was Titus and Domitian. So Domitian was actually one of Vespasian's sons. And so he did have a political voice during that time through his father Vespasian and his brother Titus, who were military men. The seventh ruler was Galba. He was an army general who usurped the position of emperor when Nero died. But Galba only lasted 7 months and was killed. This was the first family of Rome rulers, but they encapsulated the spirit of the future Roman Catholic Church, is what people fail to realize. Now, Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of the heads as if it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Watch this. The headquarters of the pagan Roman Empire was the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. This hill lost all of its power in 476 AD. I'm going to read it again. The headquarters of the pagan Roman Empire was the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. This hill lost all its power in 476 AD. And I believe, extensive research and brought it to everyone's attention in regards to what happened in 476 AD. And we begin to look at how was Rome reinstated and given a military. And we begin to look at Justinian and the Pope that came about during that time. So even 538 AD speaks volumes when we begin to look at where are we today? And then as we begin to look at the 42 months or the 1,260 years, when we attach it to these dates here. So the hill lost all its power in 476 AD when the barbarians took over the Roman Empire. The power of the Roman emperor was destroyed. But on the ruins of the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church resurrected their cruel pagan spirit as baptized paganisms and called themselves a church. The headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church was and still is the Lateran Basilica next to the Lateran Palace on the Caelian Hill. We're almost done, Bishop Picard. 7 means completion, all right? 7 days in a week. 8 means a new system. The beast or Roman Catholic Church is the 8th. Once again, the beast or the Roman Catholic Church is the 8th and is of the 7, meaning the Roman Catholic Church is of the nature of the first 7 pagan Roman rulers. Revelation 17:1. And the beast that was and is not, and he is the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. Julius Caesar was a dictator for life. The Pope is the only dictator in Europe, and he rules for life. Only 2 popes have ever abdicated throughout church history. The papacy is a one-man show where the cardinals, like the Senate under Augustus, appear to have power, but the real decision is made by the Pope. Like Tiberius, an awful pedophile, the dark history of abuse in the Roman Church is slowly being revealed. Caligula thought he was a god. The Pope sits in the Vatican and claims that he can forgive sins. But only the Father can do that. The Bible requires us to confess our sins to Yahushua Ha'Mashiach, who acts as a mediator. Okay, he's a mediator. Not to some man, the Pope, as they do in what they call the confession booth. Father, I have sinned. And then after you tell the priest who sits, in this confession hall or this confession booth, he then says, my son, your sins are forgiven you. He does not have that power. So in 1302, the Pope announced that you cannot achieve salvation unless you are subject to the Pope. Again, in 1302, the Pope announced that you cannot achieve salvation unless you are subject to the Pope. Thus, the Pope takes the place of Christ, where we get the word vicar. His title is Vicarius Christi, in place of Christ. But the Mashiach is God. Thus, the Pope sits in the place of God. That should be easily understood. In 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. When it says that son of man be revealed, some people are believing that this is talking about a man, Ronald Reagan, 666, Bill Clinton. Some have said it was Jimmy Carter, but more so Ronald Wilson Reagan. Some said that it was Obama. No. We're talking about a system, a religious system. And that religious system operates under a lot of different umbrellas. It's a chameleon. It's the Baptist, Lutheran, Catholicism, all these other 45,000 different religions. This is what Christianity is. This is what Catholicism is. Even the Protestant churches now that protested the Catholic Church, they're still, even though they're protesting the Roman Catholic Church, if you look at their teachings, it's still almost like one and the same. Nothing has changed. But we have to make sure that we identify this chameleon as it changes over and over and over again. Now, Nero became the first Christian killer, okay? Tens of millions of non-Catholics were killed in the Dark Ages. The final Antichrist will be Satan's Superman, all right, as they say. When Satan is booted out of Shamayim as the Mashiach came back to claim his bride, then the obvious position for this man of sin is to usurp. His usurp will be the position of the Pope. That gives him the wealth and the power of ruling 1.4 billion Catholics. A great head started as he only was 3.5 years to take over the world. So he would use the military might that was given to him at that time of 10 dictators who gave their military power and strength to him. So Revelation 17 and 12, as it reads, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Verse 13, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Revelation 13 and 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after who? The beast. The barbarians now mentioned because destroyed the power of the pagan Roman Empire. The Capitoline Hill with this temple of Jupiter, that was the headquarters of the Roman Empire, and they lost all of its power. And so we have, as I have in this little cartoon drawing here, we have the Vatican City, and we have the Seven Hills, we have the Tiber's River, and then we have the city of Rome. The city of Rome is not sitting on the Vatican. These are two separate locations. But we have the Vatican City, we have the city of Rome, and I'll go into a little bit more detail a little bit later with the difference between Vatican City and the city of Rome. As the centuries went by, the Pope who lived in the what they call it now, the Lateran Palace on Caelian Hill, ever since about they have about 312 AD, it slowly began to pick up the power that the Roman Caesars lost. What was lost on the Capitoline Hill due to the barbarian sword? And I may mention, I don't remember them right off the top, but I gave the names of those 10 barbaric tribes and who they are. So I gave the ancient names and the modern names, with 3 of them being, they never became a kingdom. Okay, and this goes about when we begin to understand Eastern and Western Rome, and how the East came and helped the West in restoring Rome. Okay, and I use that word real loosely there. Okay, and what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to definitely go into this in a lot more deeper. The explanation has to be a lot deeper. I do understand that, but what I'm getting at some point, I would like for us to read for ourselves and begin to look at the Capitoline Hill, look at how Rome got started with Romus and Remulus, and this whole myth about the jackal or this hyena, and how these two boys were raised by sucking the teats of this wolf, which is a myth. But there was actually a husband and wife that actually took these two boys in and raised them, and how they were responsible for the building of Rome with these 7 cities, and how they built this fence around this particular location. A lot of history. Okay, so we're almost done. One more slide. We should be done in about 10 minutes. The ghost of a pagan Caesar resurrected up as the Pope of on the grave of the pagan Roman Empire. The Lateran Church, or Basilica on the Sicilian Hills, is officially the headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church, even though the Pope now lives in the Vatican. So we have the Caesar, so the Pope, he is the 8th and is of the 7th. So my argument is Revelation 17 and 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. Now that's, man, wow, that's very interesting. So is salvation for everybody? When they beheld the beast that was and is not and yet is, the Roman Catholic Church claimed falsely that Peter was the first pope and the rest of the popes are the successors of Peter. So as far as they can go back in church history, there always was a pope, and is not the pope dies and yet is a new pope is elected. All right. I think this is the last slide. Now, the popes are the longest line of rulers in the world. No wonder the world marvels and wonders about the popes. The beast that was and is not and yet is the apostolic succession of these popes here. So, Mishpachah, this is my lecture on the whore that sits upon many waters, part 5. I want to thank you so very much for taking time once again out of your busy schedule to join me here this evening. And what we're going to do, Mishpachah, is throw up. Let's see here how we're going to do this here. We're going to end the presentation. And I want to thank you for your time and your cooperation, Mishpachah. And until the next time, I'm going to say shalom, shalom. I pray that the Father continues to work with each and every one of us to be safe and sound in these troublous times that we're facing. And until the next time, peace and blessings. And once again, shalom, shalom.